I'm typing it. I'm typing it right now. Matt Walsh reviews the Odyssey. How about that? The Odyssey was even worse than I expected. Here is everything wrong with it. What? What are you on about? The Odyssey is so conservative. The Odyssey, it's literally... Did you not watch Ben Shapiro's video? Oh, Ben Shapiro, if you don't know. So the other day, I watched Ben Shapiro's Odyssey review, and I named it a disaster. I think Ben Shapiro is absolutely out of his mind. So today, I'm reviewing Matt Walsh's review and see if I'm going to scream at him just like I did with Ben. Let's just say I didn't really keep my cool. No, the Odyssey is such a conservative message. Neocon. Man, you can't get more right-wing than Hollywood elites, am I right? This entire situation with the Odyssey has been absolutely insane, but I'm telling you this, there are some people on the right that have been absolutely delusional. Oh no, it's so conservative. It's basically a Trump movie. I mean, the title seems like it's more what I would expect, right? But you never know. You never know. I'm still not 100% confident I'm going to agree, because at the end of the day, Matt Walsh, when reviewing video games, for instance, tends to have the opinions of a boomer within a geriatric ward. And he is younger than me. Let's go.
Now that Christopher Nolan's The
Odyssey. Let's do it.
Now that Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey has been released to near unanimous critical acclaim and significant box office success, we've been told that all the criticisms made against the film prior to its release, mostly by conservatives, have been proven baseless, even embarrassing. Those who raised concerns about the movie should now hang their heads in shame and crawl before Christopher Nolan.
Please look at the bottom left corner of the screen for a visual representation of the person he's talking about.
On hands and knees, begging for forgiveness, offering gifts of supplication like an...
Yeah, never in a million years. I will say, though, that there are some people, I'm not among those, but there are some people who did say that it was going to flop, it was going to make like 100 million, and they were out of their mind. I never was saying so. The people who said that, it's not that they need to apologize to Nolan. Man, they just gotta say, I was wrong, right? There's nothing wrong with, I mean, obviously you were wrong. No one with a brain thought that this movie, I don't know if it's gonna make billions, that's maybe not, but it flop. We just name Christopher Nolan with a 3 hours movie consisting of an IMAX shot of a roll of toilet paper would have still got broken even, all right? We know that, so whatever, please.
Ancient Greeks standing before the shrine of Apollo. This has been the basic conclusion of commentators on the left and even a fair number of commentators on the right. The wokeness allegations, they say, have been refuted. The movie is an artistic triumph, a masterpiece, and now it is our job to show that we are culturally in tuned by joining in with the applause, or at least ceasing our criticisms. That is the...
Oh, ceasing our criticism. I made a promise, guys. One video about Nolan per inhabitant of Greece. I'm not going to stop.
General consensus, as you've probably heard.
Right.
And the general consensus is, as the general consensus so often tends to be, wrong. Now that I've actually seen the movie, I can definitively say that every single criticism from conservatives was entirely correct on every point.
Every single criticism? All right, well, let's see, because that sounds a little extreme, Matt. I mean, I'm on you. I guess we probably both disagree with a lot of the casting choices and the nonsense, but every single, not even one, was wrong.
We were not only correct in our prejudgment, but much more correct than we ever knew. You can judge a book by its cover most of the time, and the cover of this one had a gender-confused woman in a man costume and a race-swapped Helen of Troy.
Helen of Congo, I expect precision.
Judged those to be massive red flags, and turns out we were right.
Correct. So, in fact, some people say, oh, but it's only 5 minutes, it's only 3 minutes. That's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. I don't care if it's 3 seconds. It's the unnecessary race swapping that is the problem that I've been fighting. It doesn't matter how much people call me the fascist for it. I don't care. This far-right grifter. Yeah, fine. It's good. Yeah, I'm a far-right grifter. Make sure you hyphenate it, because far-right needs to be a little hyphen in the middle if you use it in adjectival form. Do it right. My argument throughout this entire thing, and it seems like no one has been able to defeat it, has been the following. Why do they only race swap in one direction? Why do they only race swap white people into non-whites, but they never do the other way around when they do movies such as, we need to honor Polynesian culture, so be coherent with the ethnic casting and represent the culture right. Wakanda, freaking Wakanda. Do you think they would have ever said it's the skill of the actor that matters and casting a bunch of blonde dudes? Never gonna happen. So that is an impossible to defeat argument. And the only thing they can do is to call you racist for it, because they can't defeat the argument. They can't even engage with the argument that it's only when it's European cultures and people that it's the skill that matters. Why do you care so much? It's only 3 minutes. Yeah, take a historical black character, race swap them for 5 minutes, and see them lose their shit.
The Odyssey is indeed a 3-hour-long middle finger to its source material, to
Correct.
Western civilization,
Correct.
to white people, to
True.
Greeks, to literature, and to movie making in general. It contradicts itself to the point that every important aspect of the story, from the plot to the theme to the characterization, is reduced to incoherence. The dialogue, in the rare moments where it's even intelligible, is often clunky and heavy-handed and wildly out of place. Most of all, the film does not feel like a story set in the ancient world.
True. Now, this last thing, because I'm going to try to be honest with what I think. I'm not just going to agree with everything, although then again, brother, you need to record that all over and send it to Ben Shapiro. That's what you need to do. Matt, send the entire thing you just said to Ben Shapiro, to Shapiro Ben. I would have absolutely preferred to feel immersed 3,000 years in the past. I can see how that one is a subjective thing, because maybe there are some people who don't care about that. They still have to explain to me the injustice of the race swapping and the disrespect towards the Greeks, which isn't, by the way, just the race swapping, although that's definitely part of it. But it's everything else. It's taking their money, $6 million from taxpayers. It's not casting a single Greek in important roles. It's not caring one bit about representing their world right. It's a lot of things. It's using Homer's words to make money and enrich themselves, Hollywood elites, while at the same time bashing Homer as some kind of misogynistic clown bigot. So you're insulting the source material. That's Greeks. That's Greece. That's thousands of years worth of literary genius reduced to, you're a misogynistic bigot, but we're still going to make money off of you. I mean, all of that is disrespect to the Greeks. The guy's right. I don't even care if you think that Matt Walsh said this other thing about politics. I don't care. I care about single statements. Is this statement right? Absolutely.
Which is a fatal problem for a film set in the ancient world.
I agree.
It barely feels like a film at all, in fact. It has more the feel of a rough draft, a V1 that Nolan was contractually obligated to produce, which probably isn't far from the truth.
Was Nolan contractually obligated to produce it?
Everybody understands that with the rise of streaming services and the glut of content all over the internet,
right,
movie theater attendance has plummeted. Profit margins in the entertainment industry are lower than they've ever been. And at this point, now that Marvel has died, at least for now, there are only two reliable ways to fill theaters and generate significant profit, at least from the perspective of movie studios. And the first approach is to fund an existing IP, to include very recently viral meme IPs like Backrooms. And the second...
Yeah, I mean, I like the Backrooms. The movie was okay. I went to watch it. I actually have a little review. I just haven't posted it. Maybe I'll post it on the third channel.
The second approach is to produce an event film by somebody like Christopher Nolan, an epic that has enough set pieces and feels big enough that people will be compelled to get off their sofa and pay $20 to see it.
Yeah.
And that's what we have here. Nolan is done making original, risky stories that might not go over well. The days when he made Memento are over, for the simple reason that you don't need an IMAX theater to enjoy a film like Memento. You can watch it on your phone and get basically the same experience because it's a high-concept, dialogue-driven film with no reliance on giant monsters or 20 different A-list actors filling out the cast.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with giant monsters, by the way. That's actually one of the only good points of Nolan's Odyssey.
Yeah, I kind of liked the Cyclops. I know there are people that are, because again, when I reviewed the movie, of course, all the political messaging which is there, and don't for a second tell me again that it's a conservative messaging. You're out of your mind. You're coping at that point. You're coping. It's a cope mechanism. It's just because you're a Nolan fanboy, you're a conservative, and you want to pretend, oh no, it's a very conservative guy. That's what Nolan right wing, one of us. Not gonna happen. Not true. Cope. But I will say, but then there is also people that trashed it to a point, and I understand it. The movie deserves to be trashed because of the pandering and the message and the race swap and all the rest, but not necessarily because of its cinematography or special effects. So because there are people who did that had nothing to do with the political message, and I don't want to make fun of their talent or underrepresent and attack them. I don't know whoever did. I think they did a good job with the pigs, with the special effects, with Cersei. And again, I liked the Cyclops. The thing I didn't like is that they removed the witty line about who did this, no one, who is no one is my name, and the whole thing. Instead, they turned Odysseus into a clown who just shoots the Cyclops when there was no need to, and with that causes the death of some of his men. That one was ridiculous. Instead, the original story there is that he's witty. Now, I know there are people that say, but it's not supposed to be the original story. Okay, I am not against artistic freedom when it improves something, but they don't improve. Anyways.
As we'll discuss. But in any case, by the way, that's actually one of the only good points of
Cyclops
Nolan's
was
Odyssey,
good, yeah.
as we'll discuss. But in any case, with very few exceptions, films like Memento are no longer interesting to the big studios or to directors like Nolan. They're only interested in greenlighting films like this one. So whether you like it or not, that's the economic reality of the industry right now. And there's nothing wrong with a film like this one either, by the way, at least conceptually. An event film, an epic film based on an ancient foundational story of Western civilization could be, should be a wonderful thing.
I agree. And that's what really sucks about this, is that, as you say, they don't have the courage to do their representation by choosing an original story that is from, doesn't even have, we always say Africa, it doesn't have to be Africa, it can be, it can be anything. It could be Southeast Asia, it could be Africa. What do you know about the mythology of Vietnam? What do you know about the mythology of freaking Nepal? What do you know about the Native American mythology? What do you know? I don't know anything. If they really wanted to do representation, honor indigenous communities and all that kind of stuff, they could have done that, but they don't care about that. They care about the money. So whenever you have people on the left, in this case, because I've been critical of people on the right up to now, including Ben Shapiro, but what about people on the left? Well, they've been clapping like seals at the money that he's making. Why? He's literally Hollywood. Not only you've been telling us, eat the rich. He is rich. They are rich. This is the rich elites that you're applauding. The millionaires you say shouldn't exist. You cannot be a socialist and applaud Hollywood elites. It's impossible. Those two things are mutually exclusive if you care about class struggle and proletariat. That's one thing. But they don't care. They just want to own the chuds, and then applaud the millionaires, the millionaire class. But also is the fact that, once again, whenever a historical, mythological, literary story that is originally white, European, is race-swapped to place black people in it, to place whatever other non-white people in it, it's a middle finger to non-white people telling them, we don't care about your original stories, you need white charity. Your stories? Not good enough. Not for us. They care about the money. It's disgusting. It's disgusting on multiple layers. Any layer is disgusting because we need to protect and defend the West, and there's nothing wrong with being white and that kind of stuff. White people's culture is up for grabs, and that's ridiculous. In fact, they tell us we have no culture while they vulture it. But it's also disrespectful towards all cultures that aren't white. It's always, let's take a white queen and turn her black.
Which makes the failure of this film all the more tragic. Now, to be sure, if any director could withstand those pressures, you'd think it would be Nolan. He's about as bankable as a director can possibly be. But you have to wonder, especially after the flop that was Tenet, if he's lost his will to do anything particularly novel or outside the box. Tenet lost something like $100 million for the studio, which was only partially because of COVID. People didn't like the movie for the understandable reason that it made no sense.
I haven't watched it.
So now, after that catastrophe, maybe Nolan is more concerned with protecting his image, which is why he's increasingly relying on established stories and massive ensemble casts. Whatever the case, The Odyssey is a striking example of a director who, whether he's aware of it or not, is terrified of failing to meet expectations. He wants to give everybody, from audiences to the suits at Universal Pictures, exactly what they expect.
I disagree with this. I don't think he wants to give audiences what they expect. We didn't. A lot of us did not expect the race swapping and the changing and then bashing of the ancient stories and the ancient authors. And no, that's just the modern audiences. But the modern audiences do not represent all audiences, as we could see with the like to dislike ratio of the trailer. So does he want to give? I think he cares more about the entourage and the rich people around him. I don't think he gives a flying Cyclops about any of us down here.
And that means he must adhere to every norm in Hollywood, from DEI casting to one-dimensional characters and lots of sentimental nonsense. It also means that Nolan has to participate in Hollywood's larger objective, which is to subvert American culture by making everything gayer, more feminine, less patriotic, more depressing, and of course, less white.
True. Yeah, all of that is true, factually.
Now, I've seen people desperately trying to describe this film as path-breaking,
Hold on a minute. I need to listen to that again. Guys.
Culture by making everything gayer, more feminine, less patriotic, more depressing, and of course, less white.
Doesn't that sound exactly like a conservative message to you? I mean, right? You can't get more conservative than that.
Now, I've seen people desperately trying to describe this film as path-breaking, awe-inspiring, even transgressive, almost as if they're trying to make it true by saying so. But infusing modern liberal values into an ancient story is pretty much the least transgressive thing a Hollywood director can do. It's utterly cliched and expected, not the slightest bit challenging or interesting or bold. Nolan's not interested.
Stunning and brave? How about that?
In telling transgressive stories. He's too afraid. And that's one theory. I mean, you can make up your own explanations for Nolan's motives. Whatever the motives are, the end result speaks for itself. And to begin with, yes, this movie was just as woke as we thought it would be. The DEI casting in particular is far worse than we knew. Far worse.
True. No, it's true. Yeah, we're Greeks from Ithaca. He's right. And the people try to gaslight you with a number of minutes on screen. Now, the number of minutes of screen given to Ellen of Troy, if anything, is a slap in the face of Lupita Nyong'o, who was complaining about the screen time given to women by Homer. Well, believe it or not, Homer gave far more screen time to Helen of Troy than Nolan did in the movie.
Nolan's version of ancient Greece is a kind of multiracial utopia. Well, perhaps not utopia. Actually, Nolan's ancient Greece is relentlessly drab and dreary and depressing and colorless. All the buildings look like ancient ruins, which, yes, it makes sense for those buildings to look like ancient ruins today, but they would not have all been ancient ruins in ancient times. So,
yeah, that's true. You know what's funny, though? The pyramids were ancient already in ancient Egypt. The pyramids were ancient because there were thousands of, like, if you look at Cleopatra, she's closer to the development of the iPhone than to the building of the pyramids. So something like that can happen depending on the situation. But definitely, no, Mycenaean palaces should have been fully painted in color. I hate that as a Mediterranean man because they're failing to represent probably one of the most beautiful aspects of my side of the world in classical antiquity, which is indeed the fact that at the end of the day, the architecture, the building, and the clothing were so polychromatic that they were basically mirroring the multicolored beauty of the nature in the Mediterranean basin. That's what it is, because you see blues and reds and oranges and greens and yellows all over the place in nature, and that's reflected onto the structures that you have in Italy, Greece, but in period. When it comes to the multiracial aspect, I need to hear him flesh it out, because of course there is people that want to make it sound like 1/5 of every city's population is a different ethnicity, which is nonsense. But at the same time, it's not true that there were literally zero, because I've heard people say that there were zero non-whites in classical antiquity. And I'm like, that's also false. It depends heavily on the area. There are some areas that were extremely homogeneous ethnically, and this remains so all the way up to the Middle Ages. And in fact, there are some areas of Poland and Czechia, even today, that like it's really difficult to run into someone who isn't white. With that being said, coastal towns, cultural centers, and areas, particularly around the Mediterranean, would have had a percentage of minorities. They're still minorities. The majority of people would have been ethnically European. That's a fact. But you would have had minorities, whether it comes to travelers, traders, soldiers, and of course, if in any area became, for instance, a province of the Roman Empire, that clearly the people living there are now part of the empire. So if you set a scene in one of those towns, well, in fact, white is going to be the minority, but we're still within the Roman Empire. It really is area dependent. But in general, this idea that it was so inclusive and diverse, and there were basically so many black people and Indians all over the place, and Asians, and like you basically wouldn't see white people in Europe, is ridiculous. So we would have to understand, it takes some nuance to explain the multiracial aspect of the ancient world.
So this is not a utopia, but in Nolan's vision, it is nonetheless absurdly diverse and multiracial. Blacks and Asians, Hispanics, somehow all coexisting in the Mediterranean 3,000 years ago.
Right.
Now, Nolan does not softly coax the audience into the DEI net, easing us into it slowly but surely. No, he cranks the diversity meter up to 1,000 from the very first frame. The
True.
first character we see is the rapper Travis Scott.
Yeah, that's done on purpose. It is obviously done on purpose.
Who somehow manages to turn in a bad performance despite appearing on screen for 12 seconds.
He's not an actor.
He got 12 seconds and he completely botched it somehow. And then we see Ellen Page portraying a Greek warrior waddling around the desert like a child with a soiled diaper, straining under her rubber armor, looking like she's about to die even before she gets shot through with
Goodness gracious, the rubber armor.
arrows. The defenders of this film, especially on the right, have tried to claim that Page's appearance is not a huge problem because she only has a small role. You've probably heard that. It's a very small role. Now, I don't want to ascribe sinister motives to anybody or accuse them of lying, so I will generously assume that the conservative commentators making that claim must have fallen asleep 10 seconds into the movie, which would be totally understandable, frankly. If they actually watched the entire thing in a state of full consciousness, or at least half consciousness, then they would know that Ellen Page is not a minor character in this film at all. She is utterly pivotal to the plot. She's one of the most important characters in the entire film.
Pivotal to the plot? Yes. As I say, when some people use the screen time, it's not that long, the screen time, so that's true. But at the same time, he's correct. It is a pivotal character.
She is more than that, and as Steve Deese has pointed out, the moral conscience of the story. Her inclusion in this film, in that role, is without question one of the wokest, most radically left-wing things we have ever seen.
I think it's worse with a race swap.
In a mainstream Hollywood blockbuster film. There is no doubt about that. If any director but Christopher Nolan had done this, he would have no conservative defenders at all. To claim that a movie is not woke when there's a trans-identified female actress pretending to be a male Greek warrior who serves as the linchpin of the plot and the film's moral conscience is just ridiculous. I mean, if we're going to rightly claim that it's woke to have a brown-skinned Hispanic Snow White, then how can we possibly argue that there's nothing woke about a trans female portraying an ancient Greek warrior? Now, the argument from Nolan's conservative defenders seems to be, rather explicitly, that it's okay when Nolan does it. I find that argument to be unpersuasive.
Yeah, you know who says that? Ben Shapiro.
If not pathetic. Indeed, if you believe that Nolan is one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, then the logical conclusion is that it's worse when he does it, not better.
I agree with that. Skill should come with higher expectation, and if anything, if you are one of Nolan's fanboys, you should be disappointed in him rather than shilling. If you appreciate my content so far and wish to help ensure my ability to continue to tell it how it is, regardless of any possible backlash, please support this channel on Patreon. Any support helps me and my team of academics keep the channel strong and gives us the means to fight back against the political rewriting of history. Stand with us, form the wall, defend the truth.
DEI casting in a crappy Snow White remake directed by random Disney director number 1242 is far less significant and culturally corrosive than DEI casting by one of the most influential and marketable filmmakers of all time. Obviously. And that's not where the diversity casting ends, not by a long shot. Odysseus' crew consists of many people of different races, multiple Asians, including his second-in-command. Now, this character, the second-in-command, played by the actor Himesh Patel, has a heavy presence in the film. He has a ton of screen time, and every minute he's visible on screen is another minute where total immersion in the story is impossible. I mean, at one point...
For me, it's even... Because again, when we say immersion and we understand the ancient world, then we do understand that a certain level of multiracial casting within the ranks of an army is okay in classical antiquity. Certain level. What makes me angry about it is that they used him to say we're Greeks from Ithaca, and that's a message about immigration. You know it, I know it, and let's not gaslight.
This character says the line, we're Greeks from Ithaca.
Exactly.
And it's one of the most unintentionally hilarious moments in the movie. Now, there are no intentionally hilarious moments, as the movie, unlike Homer's original epic, is totally humorless, utterly devoid of charm or wit. But there are several moments where you can't help but laugh, and this is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine a movie set in the 12th century China where a white actor with a slight southern accent looks at the camera and says, "We're Chinese from the Chengdu province."
I mean, he's right. Absolutely. They will never do that. That's also my point, and we'll get back to it. But generally speaking, whenever you want to address people that are trying to defend this, all you need to do is flip any argument they may have. Just flip it. If they tell you, well, but you know, there were minorities that actually lived in that area, we're like, okay, fine. So if I make a video and I set it in the Kingdom of Kush, not a video movie, and I set it in the Kingdom of Kush, and I race swap the queen. I race swap, that's exactly what they did, right? They didn't race swap a random person. They race swap Helen and Clytemnestra. So, Sparta and Mycenae. So basically, I would tell you where we know that there were some white people living in that area of modern-day Sudan because they are in the iconography. Hence, I can now justify the race swapping of both queens, Amanirenas and the previous one. And now they're going to be played by blonde chicks with blue eyes. And at the same time, because we know that there was the occasional white guy living in that area, we're going to have a random person walking around in the kingdom of Meroe. And the camera is going to look at this ginger hair white guy, and he's going from Ireland, and he's going to say, "We are the Kushites from Kush." It would never fly. It would never fly. And that is why they will always lose. I tried it on X. I actually, every single person was like, "Oh, but actually there were some non-whites in the area." So I said, okay, so would you be okay with this? You know what they say every single time? Attack ad personam. Every single time, insult me. They can never address the argument. They always say, "I knew, you should be ashamed of being such a racist bigot." When they go that way, you know, you won. They can't address the argument.
And you'll get an idea of how totally ludicrous this spectacle is. All that to say, this is one of the most out-of-place characters I've seen in a major film in memory. And on top of that, his performance itself was flat and bland and uninspired. He brought nothing to the role. I mean, if you're not going to look the part, at least act the part, but he doesn't even do that. So why is he there? Okay, anyone trying to rescue Nolan from wokeness allegations, answer me this. Why was that guy in that role?
DI.
It was a bland, pointless performance. He wasn't there because of his acting chops. So what was it?
My problem with this line of attack, Matt, I think my line of attack is 10 times stronger, which is pretty much yours as well. The one talking about, well, what about Chengdu? What about Beijing or Shanghai? Whatever, Xi'an, one of the Chinese places, and then we're going to place a couple of white actors. That's a lot stronger as an argument. This is weaker simply because someone could tell you, well, to you, he didn't do a good job, but to me, it was phenomenal. And when it comes to subjective evaluations and assessment, what am I going to tell them? You're wrong. He's objectively bad. I can't really do that. I kind of agree with him. I don't think he brought anything, but I can recognize that maybe it's my bias. Maybe I'm biased because I'm annoyed by the race swapping and the DI and the injustice thereof. And so perhaps that's why I didn't enjoy his acting. I can't completely remove that possibility. To you, he did a horrible job acting. May well be the case. It's just not really strong as a line of argumentation.
I wonder. Now, as a side note, I'll mention that Patel was actually born in the UK. He has a British accent.
Yes.
Yet in this movie, he affects an American accent. All the actors, even the British ones, use a contemporary American accent.
Quite believable, to be honest. So they must have had some proper coaching.
This was a creative choice by Nolan, but it doesn't work. You know, I'm not saying that Nolan had to go full Mel Gibson and have the characters all speak in the original language of the source material, although I personally would have appreciated that.
Yeah, speak some linear B.
But I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm saying that if you're going to make a movie set in the ancient world, the characters should speak in a way that sounds and feels ancient.
I agree with that. And in fact, when they say, and Tom Holland was being the clown that he is, when he was saying that, well, you know, people expect me to say father instead of daddy, but I wouldn't have said father if I was the original. I would have spoken Greek. So this is stupid because the ancient world, and if you had spent 15 seconds reading the source materials in whether it be Latin, ancient Greek, or whatever it is, they have a different register. There are things that feel modern because guess what? They are. And in fact, you don't even need to go back to Bronze Age Greece. You can easily go back 100 years ago. And there are some expressions. If you listen to the transatlantic accent of the 1950s and 1940s, you know what it sounds like? It sounds formal. You don't need to go back to the ancient times. So even more so, it's a different level. It's a matter of register, of formality that makes it more believable. Because when you say, your daddy's home, let's go, dude. Hey, bro, awesome armor. Homie, instead of Homer.
Having them speak in a modern accent using modern slang and modern colloquialisms interferes with the immersion into the film.
True.
Which is a theme we'll return to frequently. So put another way, in a story set 3,000 years in the past, none of the characters should look or sound or act like someone who's ever been to a McDonald's. And yet they all look and sound and act exactly like that. But back to the DEI elements. Now, even if you pretend that Himesh Patel is a good actor, the casting doesn't work. I mean, keep in mind, this is a movie about how difficult it was for Odysseus and his crew to travel just 560 nautical miles from Troy to Ithaca. This is a point that Steve Saylor made on his Substack. In ideal circumstances, with no interruptions, ancient boats could have made that trip in about a week, but the journey takes Odysseus many years, with considerable interruptions along the way, of course.
More than 7, because 7 years, I think it was just stranded on the island, 10 years in fighting at Troy, so that doesn't count. I guess it's 7 years, if I remember right.
And that gives you an idea of how fraught it was to travel even short distances at that time. And yet, in defiance of all common sense and logistics, a bunch of South Asians apparently managed to travel thousands of miles to Greece, where they joined Odysseus' crew. In fact, in this version of the ancient world, people from all over the globe apparently travel and intermingle with each other with ease. And the problem here, one of the problems anyway, is that the casting by itself contradicts the internal logic of the story.
I think you're misunderstanding, I won't agree with this, simply because I think you're misunderstanding how travel worked in classical antiquity. Meaning, yes, it took him 7 years to go from Troy, meaning historical Troy, if we want to be the western border of the Anatolian Peninsula, modern-day Turkey, as it's been found by Schliemann. Still, yeah, it took him 7 years, but it took him 7 years because Poseidon didn't want him to get there, because the gods interfered. Not because it actually took it would take 7 years in classical antiquity. It wouldn't, absolutely not. They were very good at nautical navigation, whether it be the Carthaginians, even the Romans. Oftentimes we think I have an entire dedicated video to this, to the myth that Romans had no navy. The Romans absolutely had a navy, and we know that because the Carthaginians, even before the Punic Wars started, they had the Romans write and sign, if you will, agreements where they would place a line in the Mediterranean, and the Romans weren't allowed to move any of their ships. They would put a line in the Mediterranean, and the Romans weren't allowed to have any of their ships cross that line unless it was for running away, so like retreating from an enemy during a battle, or because of bad weather. And this tells us that the Carthaginians thought that the Romans could have been a menace. And if they thought that the Romans could have been a menace and you're not going with your ships through this line, of course they did eventually, and we know what happened. There were a lot of pirates, there were a lot of pirates around. And yeah, we have proof that there were Celts living in North Africa. For anyone who, again, wants to say North Africa means black, it doesn't. Not only because there were plenty of local populations that were of Semitic origin, and in fact, Sardinians, or there were a lot of people, Carthaginians, that even though initially the Phoenicians are Semitic people, but also they eventually intermingle with people from the Aegean, so they're kind of similar genetically to the Greeks. There were a lot of non-blacks in North Africa. And but also at the same time, there were Celts that were living there. We know that through the surnames that are recorded in papyri in ancient Egypt. But also we know that there were at least some Africans, meaning black Africans, that lived in Britannia. Not that many, but they existed. The ancient world is interconnected and movement is possible. And using it took 7 years, it's not a great, because it took 7 years because the gods intervened, not because it was that difficult to travel. It's an important aspect to underline. Still, I do think the DEI is nonsense, but I think the DEI is nonsense because of the message. within it, and because of the race swapping of characters that we know should not have been anything but Greek.
That Nolan is supposedly telling. When African rappers have landed in Ithaca and Koreans and Indians and Hispanics have somehow made the trek there as well, and they all live there not as exotic foreigners, but as regular inhabitants of the region, then you're sending the message that travel isn't that difficult. In fact, you seem to be saying, I don't know, that air travel exists. It makes you wonder somewhere during this 3-hour runtime of the film, why exactly Matt Damon didn't just log into his Expedia account and book a first-class ticket on Delta.
That's funny.
I mean, that would have been a lot easier. Although, in fairness, if the only tickets available were on Southwest, he probably was better off on the ship. Now, Nolan was obviously aware of all these issues. You know, we have to give him credit. He's a talented, competent director. Even I will admit that. So that means the choice was deliberate. Nolan went out of his way to make the crew as diverse as possible. Even when his casting decisions undermine not just the audience's immersion, but the foundational logic of the plot itself.
And remember, it is a choice to say it's got to be the non-whites who say we're Greeks from Ithaca. It's a choice. It's because it's a message. In fact, first and foremost, it's a message to the Greeks to tell them, you think you're ethnically Greek? Well, we're just as Greek as you, even though we don't speak the language. And we've just arrived 2 weeks ago and we hate you. But that's how it is. That's a message. And at the same time, why couldn't it have been a Greek actor say that? We're Greeks from Ithaca. No. It's a choice. It is a choice. And that message extends to every single person in the West.
It's the worst case scenario for DEI hiring in a film because you can't ignore it without also ignoring the setting, the plot, the characters, and everything else.
Right.
And yet you'll hear some conservatives defending Nolan on this point. Their main argument, as best I can tell, is that the DEI casting is relatively minimal and doesn't take up much screen time. But
basically, they're using left-wing talking points at this point.
Even if that were true, and it's not even close, it's extraordinary to watch how quickly conservatives are willing to cave in scenarios where their opponents would never dream of doing so.
That's true.
I mean, it's the kind of thing that only happens in one direction. If somebody made a movie set in Africa,
there we go,
and based on ancient African folklore, and then populated the cast with white people and other random races and ethnicities that have nothing to do with Africa, everybody would say the casting is ridiculous and distracting at best, and they would be correct.
Yes, that's a very good point. So this video review, again, I'm not agreeing with everything, but it is 50 times better than Ben Shapiro's. Like, no questions asked. The point he just made, even if you are a far left viewer of mine, you are a communist. He's correct. You gotta give him this. He's absolutely right. You know that if that thing happened with Africans, the left would lose their shit. And I'm gonna be honest, I'd lose my shit too. As I have in the past, by the way. Because I've always been against all forms of race swaps. As my haters always forget to mention.
If the movie was set in sub-Saharan Africa in the year 1100, and Chris Pratt showed up in tribal garb and said, "Howdy there, folks. I'm an African tribal chieftain. How do you do?"
Yes. Okay.
There wouldn't be a single soul on the planet who would defend that obviously preposterous casting choice.
100% correct. Matt is right.
Yet the same thing is done in the reverse to a foundational text of Western civilization. And even conservatives line up to defend it. Again, the word that comes to mind is pathetic.
True, pathetic.
Now, if you're a conservative and you're unwilling to tell the truth about what's happening here for fear of being labeled a culture warrior or something, God forbid.
Who cares?
We don't want to be culture. You wouldn't want to fight for the culture. Well, who would want to do that? That's silly. That's ridiculous. But if you have those reservations, you should know the left has no such reservations. They explicitly want future generations to see Western culture as a universal product, as the outgrowth of modern-day diversity with no distinct contribution from whites. There's no better way to undermine the future of Western civilization than to pretend Western civilization was invented by everybody as some kind of multiracial democratic group effort. And that's why they're doing this. That's what they're going for, whether you want to pay attention or not. Now, when I made this point on X, I was informed that actually white people are supposedly doing the exact same thing. I was told that there are plenty of films, recent films, where white actors are taking roles where they don't belong as an effort to stamp out other cultures. And as evidence of this proposition, I was informed about the existence of precisely one movie called Gods of Egypt.
Oh, yeah, it's nonsense. And I've already said this multiple times. Yeah, that looks like nonsense.
And this came into my feed a bunch of times because I made this point about if this happened in the reverse, everybody would be upset. This is the only movie anyone, all of a sudden, everybody was Gods of Egypt. Like, no one's ever heard of that movie. Well, as you can see from the poster there, the film features Gerard Butler and Geoffrey Rush, who don't appear to be Egyptian, and yet they're starring in a film called Gods of Egypt. So there you have it. White people are trying to erase non-whites from Hollywood. I have to admit it's amusing, if nothing else. People are desperately searching for an example of a modern movie that's been race swapped.
Modern, not going to happen. No, they're going to have to go back to the 1950s, the origins of Hollywood and that kind of stuff. Because otherwise, it just doesn't happen. And even with Gods of Egypt, do remember that unless you're looking at the actual Black Pharaoh dynasty, then you're not even race-swapping black people. You're race-swapping olive-skinned people, if we're gonna be honest. But then again, it's the gods, and I don't think the gods should be race-swapped. Just like I don't want Athena to be race-swapped. I want her to be represented the way the Greeks imagined her. Also because they tell us, just like they tell us Achilles had blonde golden hair, and there he is, represented as Black Achilles with a bald head. Fantastic. Y'all know I love it. But yeah, very good. I complained about that 9 years ago. I'm still doing it. Because then again, the shaming tactics don't work on me, but unfortunately they do work on other people, it seems. They don't work on me. You can try to shame me as much as you want. People now are using the number of videos that I made about this as if every YouTuber on this platform does it. When something works and gets the views, you repeat it. Moreover, in this case, it's actually something I really care about. So for me, it's a win-win. I will never stop. I'll post videos that are about something else as well, but I will never stop talking about this. So the shaming tactics just, they don't work.
Like the Odyssey, but in the opposite direction. And the best they can do is some obscure film nobody's heard about from 10 years ago that nobody watched and has a 15% rating on Rotten Tomatoes that was, in fact, panned by everybody. So if your intention was to prove my point, you succeeded.
Yeah, and I think it's important to underline that that's nonsense too. How were at this point, show me the gods with blue skin, green skin, and gold skin, and let's go that way then, because that's how the Egyptians imagined their gods. And then I want Anubis to be with the face of the monster. I remember the animal in English, sciacallo in Italian, whatever. So yeah, accuracy. How did the Egyptians imagine their gods? Then represent them that way. And I would say the same about some culture somewhere else, everywhere, and the Native Americans, whatever.
Like I said, these race swaps only go in one direction, and everybody knows it.
Yes, of
course. Now, if I had to play devil's advocate, I'd say that the conservatives, are giving Nolan a pass on the casting because they think the overall message of the film is conservative.
Ridiculous.
But that's not true either.
Thank you.
Not even close.
Thank you.
Okay, during the film, you'll get multiple lectures from women about how they're oppressed by the patriarchy. Yeah. Late in the film, we're treated to a cartoonishly anachronistic speech from Odysseus' wife, Penelope, about how unfair it is that the suitors won't let her become king in Odysseus' absence. She has all this knowledge and wisdom, but the patriarchy is keeping her down. And it's played completely straight, even though it's clearly a clumsy attempt to airdrop contemporary feminist attitudes into a story where it doesn't belong and into
Mycenaean women,
to a time period where such attitudes did not exist.
He's correct about this, meaning not only from a logical standpoint, you're like, of course, modern feminism doesn't exist. Right, but let's be precise. Female regents do happen in ancient Greece at one point. They are rare, and generally speaking, it's that kind of situation where eventually, of course, when the son has priority. So once the son gets to age, the woman leaves the throne. It's always like that. But female regent queen do exist in ancient Greece in the Hellenistic period, not in the Mycenaean period. So once again, he's correct to say that in that specific time, even the mentality wouldn't exist of, but I'm a woman, and just because I'm a female, the fact you're a man, yet to her that would be obvious. That would be just the natural order of society.
And certainly at no point in Homer's Odyssey did Penelope whine about how she could take over as king, because it would have been totally absurd.
Yes.
But in this film, with a supposedly conservative message, we're supposed to be okay with the idea that Penelope has the exact same attitude you expect from a newly minted women's studies major in the Bronx. Then there's the fact that the film goes out of its way to strip the story of divinity as much as possible. Nolan suggests that Odysseus' problems amount to bad luck rather than divine intervention. No gods show up at all. Zeus and Poseidon don't appear as characters.
Yes.
Only goddesses appear in the film, and then only as PTSD hallucinations, basically.
That's true. Also, she's not Athena, never will be. And one thing I want to say is that it's insane because Athena is the Deus ex machina device inside the original story. She's the one that makes things happen for Odysseus. So to remove her, if anything, you're deleting a female protagonist from the story. But it's fine, I guess, because it's a Greek woman or a white woman, or according to Ben Shapiro, they're too different. You're Greek, you can't be white if you're Greek. Freaking Ben Shapiro, I swear.
Zendaya as Athena pops up incessantly, and again, just does nothing with the role. That's a theme here. You got these actors. The movie is chock full of A-list actors. A lot of them doing nothing with the roles they're given. It's amazing. It's like kind of amazing to watch. She's in this. She does nothing. She just kind of somberly stares at Odysseus. That's all that happens.
That could be a script problem rather than a skill problem. I'll give her that. I think it's Nolan's vision. That's what I think.
But the point is that she isn't real within the context of the story. She's a kind of therapeutic coping mechanism for a man struggling with trauma. Nolan's Odyssey, unlike Homer's, is a story completely disenchanted, devoid of the supernatural, aside from like the odd witch or two that shows up. And now Nolan's apologists will say that, well, he did this because he was going for a more grounded film, right? That's what we keep hearing. Well, it's a grounded film. Oh, okay, then. So, grounded is what we're doing. So then why does ancient Greece have the demographic makeup of Los Angeles circa 2026? Why is there a tiny little woman running around pretending to be a dude? Why is there an Asian guy delivering the line, "We're Greeks from Ithaca"? Grounded? Really? Grounded in what? So the apologists are letting Nolan have his cake and eat it too, like always.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot argue that Nolan had to take the gods out of a story of Greek mythology in order to ground it, and then also argue that Ellen Page's appearance isn't a major problem.
And then the Cyclops.
In fact, Nolan himself has said that he expelled the gods from his films, from this film, because he preferred to handle the supernatural in a, quote, real-world way.
In a real-world way. So what about Scylla? How is Scylla? Which appears very briefly. I wish it was longer. And even the Sirens, I wish it was longer. That was awful, by the way. You cannot defend this movie and defend the scene of Argos, the dog, which should have been moving. It's brushed up very quickly. It doesn't matter. Really, the dog patiently waiting for his master for all these years. He remember him from when he was a puppy, the wiggling his tail as he's dying. That's just done awfully. I don't care. Even if you gave this movie 10 out of 10, you cannot tell me that the Argos scene is well done. But then again, the people that give it 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, they don't care about the truth. They just care about owning the charts. That's how it is. Just like there are some people on the right that give it a 0 out of 10. I give it a 0 out of 10, but only when I include the politics. If I remove the politics, it's a mid movie. Between 5 and 6. No more than that. And because I liked the Cyclops, actually. I did like the Cyclops. It was, but then again, the plate armored guys, yeah, you know what, I decrease it to a 5. But here's the thing, it's a mid movie. I'm not going to give it a 0 without the politics. I only give it a 0 because I sympathize with the Greeks. But when it comes to the people who give it at 9, 10, just liars.
Well, again, if he's worried about the real world of ancient Greece, then why does ancient Greece look absolutely nothing like ancient Greece?
Exactly.
Now, to the extent that Zeus does play a role in Nolan's film, it's because he's mentioned about 500 times in the context of Zeus's law.
Okay, let's go.
Quote unquote. Again, this is a concept that doesn't exist, at least in the way Nolan portrays it in Homer's Odyssey. The idea of Zeus's law, as the characters tell you to your face, and one of the many examples of on-the-nose exposition that treats the audience like it has a collective IQ of 45, is that Greeks should treat strangers as they'd like to be treated. Now, more broadly, Zeus's law is Nolan's spin on the Greeks' concept of xenia, or hospitality, which does play an important role in Homer's poem. But contrary to what Nolan seems to think, his idea of Zeus's law is very different from the Greek concept of hospitality as outlined in Homer. I mean, and you don't have to squint very hard to see how Nolan is trying to twist this concept into a not very subtle sermon about modern-day immigration policy.
True. Okay, based review then. I agree with Matt.
And in Nolan's film, Odysseus spends a significant amount of time moping around, sullen and depressed after enabling the destruction of Troy. by using the Trojan horse. And for those who somehow aren't familiar, the Greeks presented the horse as a gift, but they had filled it with soldiers, and at night the soldiers opened the gates of Troy, enabled the Greek army to invade.
Yes.
So this was a massive and unlikely victory, which was brought about because of the Greeks' trickery and cunning. And in Homer, it was a heroic maneuver. Odysseus had outsmarted his enemies.
Yes.
It was a virtue. It was not portrayed in Homer as a violation of xenia or hospitality or anything like that.
Yeah, of course, hospitality, but by whom? The enemy? It's not even during a truce, by the way. It's during war. Oh, but you're not nice to your enemy.
There was no sense that Odysseus had committed some grave crime. Odysseus was very confident, but he was also effective in crushing his enemies. In Homer, xenia didn't mean that you would never trick your enemy in a war. It was about hospitality. A very different concept that applied to your dealings with strangers. And on the other hand, in Nolan's film...
Good strangers. Because the bad strangers, or the bad foreigners, or the bad... Yeah, strangers is fine. Like the suitors get what they deserve. So you're supposed to be nice to strangers in need, whether it be foreigners, whether it be... Yeah, if they are nice. But if they try to exploit you, your society, take your women, mess with your kids, you introduce them to the business end of a bronze axe. That's the message from Homer. Thank you, Homer.
Zeus's law works very differently. Zeus's law, as Odysseus explains it, means that you're not supposed to use gifts, like the Trojan horse, as a trick in order to enable a ground invasion. So in other words, whether Nolan realizes it or not, he's completely bastardized a central concept in the poem. And
he knows it.
In the name of this bastardization, Nolan transforms Odysseus into a whiny, solemn shell of a man plagued by trauma and guilt because he violated some fake idea of Zeus's law by destroying Troy. And of course, the idea of an ancient warrior feeling really bad about a glorious victory is absurd on its face. And the more you think about it, the worse it gets. I mean, if you have any familiarity at all with the source material, it's actually kind of incredible that Nolan would even try this. First, the Trojan horse wasn't the start of the conflict. You know, it's not as though Odysseus started the war by defying some sacred norm. The film suggests the war actually started over trade routes, and Helen was basically a pretext and was not, in fact, the most beautiful woman in the world. So it's not clear why it's some grave sin to end a war that's been going on for 10 years with all the brutality that war entails.
Yeah.
I mean, is the implication that it would also be unethical to execute a clever flanking maneuver that tricked an enemy general?
Right.
Would the Battle of Chancellorsville be a violation of Zeus's law? Who knows? The other problem is that in the film, Odysseus is so weepy and sad about his violation of Zeus's law that he decides to go into exile. But first he has to kill a bunch of suitors who are trying to marry his wife. Specifically, he has to pretend to be a beggar in order to infiltrate the palace, at which point he'll launch a surprise attack where he...
Yeah, that part of the attack was actually kind of entertaining. I don't know if you hated it, Matt, but for me it was kind of entertaining.
Brutally murders the suitors. So in other words, in order to rectify his violation of Zeus's law during the Trojan War that he feels really bad about in the movie, Odysseus violates Zeus's law again by killing the suitors using trickery, to get into the palace. But he thinks it's partially okay, I guess, because the suitors themselves were taking advantage of Penelope's hospitality by getting drunk in the palace and hitting on Penelope while Odysseus was away. And then after this massacre, Odysseus decides that he's tired of violating Zeus's law and sails away with Penelope. So, spoiler alert. Yeah, a little late. So he does not, in this movie, he does not reclaim the throne in glory.
That's insane.
He also doesn't die for his sins. Both of those would have been decisive choices that clarified the themes and concluded the story, but Nolan chooses the third and most indecisive route, having Odysseus leave and hand the throne to his son, who, portrayed by Tom Holland, will presumably bore all of his subjects to death, as he's done to the audience for 3 hours with his insipid, dull performance. Part of the problem when you create a new interpretation of this quote-unquote law is that your characters have to interact with that. And in this case, the characters interact with the law in ways that don't make much sense.
Not to mention, but they also changed the fact that in the original story, Menelaus accepts his wife back, Helen. He forgives her and even honors her when she returns to him. Here instead, and that's because she's black and he's white, they turned him into an abusive husband who actually carves her up, their face. Fantastic, because you couldn't have a good man being white. So either you swap him as well, Menelaus, because I can tell you this much, and you know I'm right. If they did race swap Menelaus and cast a black actor, then he would have been nice to Helen. They would have honored it. I forgive you. But they didn't do that. And so they had to go for it. It's just so clear with these people and their awful messaging.
This is a problem Nolan creates that didn't exist in Homer. He made the central character of the story become depressed over violating some law that doesn't make sense, which derails the entire story, and it makes everybody's motivations murky and uncertain. And in fact, this is a catastrophic error so severe that even Emily Wilson, the University of Pennsylvania feminist who wrote a woke translation of the Odyssey that Nolan relied on for the film, is now publicly calling out the film's portrayal of Odysseus.
I love how people get triggered by the Emily Wilson's translation being called woke, and they say, it's not woke, it's not woke. And they go up so far as to say she didn't inject any politics, and I've heard people even saying she's not political. Which is ridiculous, because all you need to do is watch the interviews. Watch the interviews to see how much she bashes Homer, the ancient Greeks, and Odysseus. These white men, she says, as he returns back and gets his slaves and his objectified wife. And that's not political. Oh no, she didn't inject any politics with complicated man. Come on.
This is one of the more amusing developments of this whole saga. I mean, even the woke translator can't take it anymore. She's siding with the crazy right-wingers.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. That was insane. I have a dedicated video, by the way. Look it up.
Watch.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this. I already covered it. Look, so far I'd say this is fine. So he's gonna go into Emily Wilson. What else have we got?
In Apocalypto, Mel Gibson transports you into the mind of it seems. And Nolan never achieves this. He never comes close to achieving it. He never even tries, it seems. In Apocalypto, Mel Gibson transports you into the mind of a Mayan 500 years ago. In The Northman, Robert Eggers transports you into the mind of a Viking 1,000 years ago. And in the Odyssey, Christopher Nolan transports you into the mind of a liberal woman in 2017. At no point in the story does Nolan ever actually take the audience to the ancient world. You never feel like you're 3,000 years in the past. You feel like you're watching modern liberal Westerners put on a pageant, because you are. Nobody would be calling this thing a masterpiece if it was made by a director not named Christopher Nolan.
Right.
There's a difference between buying...
Okay, so so far, I mean, it's 46 minutes. It's a little too long for me, to be honest. But I'm going to say, yes, I agree with him. Much better. There were a few points that disagreed, but in general, much better. Like it's a completely different level than what Ben Shapiro did. So yeah, it was a pretty good review. I agree with Matt. What do you think? I know you'll let me know in the comments. You Muppets. Ciao, ciao.